The Thunder are now one game away from an NBA title. I honestly never thought I was going to be saying those words, after all these years, seeing the team, go through Kevin Durant, Westbrook, Paul George, the Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, and then getting Shea and everything. I never thought I'd be saying those words, but yet here we are, one win away from the NBA title. I have been so impressed, and honestly, obviously J-Dub masterclass. That goes without saying. He had by far his most impressive game. He stepped up in a game where the team not only needed him most, but also he was able to survive the non-Shea minutes in dominant fashion. I mean, he was getting downhill at will. There was nothing anyone on the Pacers could do to stop him. He was abusing mismatches, coming off a screen. It didn't even need a screen most of the time, just isolation, just two quick dribbles, and he was straight by his defender. So many high off the glass finishes, just absolutely amazing to see from him. I was really impressed, though, with just the Thunder defense as a whole, especially the first half was very good to see. They were able to really limit Tyrese Halliburton's touches on off-ball Lou Dort. Obviously, he did a great job on that. Now, Tyrese Halliburton would kind of tweak his leg. We're not quite sure. I think it's a calf thing that they're saying, but there's nothing really like super official yet. But obviously, hopefully he's okay. It's not the same series if Halliburton's not playing like himself, which in this game he didn't. Just 4 points on let's see, there he is, 0 for 6 shooting from the field. 4 points it was not good for him. But other than him, Siakam obviously had an incredible night. He was attacking a lot in the post, which was good to see. It was just kind of one of those things that he needed to drive, and he kind of figured that out as well. I was happy to see him being aggressive and attacking the hoop, getting to the free throw line a lot. It was really a nice game for Siakam. Turnover wise, obviously not the best. Couple times he would get trapped baseline, or he'd get doubled up top. Someone would jump one of his passes. And I think that was probably the biggest story of this game, was the Thunder getting in those passing lanes. I think personally I would say it's the best I've ever seen. I've never seen a defense. It's like watching an NFL corner. You kind of bait the QB to throw that pass, and right when you see his arm flick your way, you automatically go jump that ball and run it back to the end zone. That's what the Thunder did several times in this game. I couldn't even keep count of how many times they did it. But I was very impressed again with the entire defense. Benedict Mathurin, he was a question mark for this game. And starting off, he looked pretty solid. Comes into the game immediately, boom, chase down block, and then he's aggressive in the offensive end. But unfortunately for him, he kind of forced some tough shots trying to get to the line, and he was unable to do so. But I was glad to at least see him be aggressive. But it didn't really turn out how they needed it to. And then Myles Turner, he's just been so up and down this entire series. But I think the biggest part is just that his floor spacing is supposed to be one of the biggest things that we can really see from him. And he has yet to have, an insane punishment game other than, game one, I think he had a good game. But other than that, he hasn't had a game where he's really punished this OKC defense by, standing up top of the key. Launching threes. And we also saw that when Myles Turner was not on the court, the Pacers could not really defend the rim. Now, Siakam, I will say, he did a very solid job, in help defense, kind of shutting down some of those drives. Shea, he got a couple blocks on him, if I remember right, and a couple contests on like Chet, making things difficult for him just with his thinner frame. But I really love the aggression, especially just when Turner is not in the game. J-Dub knows that there's not a lot of bodies that when he gets downhill that are someone that's going to be big enough to really stop him from getting his shot off. And obviously 40 ball from J-Dub though was, I genuinely didn't know how to feel. I still really don't. And I'm so impressed though, after his up and down stretches in this playoffs, had a good Grizzlies series against the Nuggets. He had some very costly games where he just couldn't throw it in the ocean. And now here we are. He's learned and just developed so much even from that moment just, a month ago. And it's crazy to see from him. Now coming out of halftime, the Thunder were up by, I believe, 13 or maybe 12. And right instantly when you come into the second half, you can see the TJ McConnell impact. Halliburton, obviously was not able to play like himself, but McConnell was doing everything to raise the pace of this team. He did a great job. He ended up with, I believe, 13 points in the third quarter. So many of those little, 5 to 10 foot pull up middies. One of them, he was literally getting tackled by 3 Thunder defenders and still made it. I don't know what he's on about. Very impressive game from him, though, to say the least. And I think the Pacers did a great job, though, of fighting back. They didn't give up until it was literally the end of the game, but they kept fighting back. The lead to go from 12 down to 5, back to 10, down to 4. But every time the Thunder were able to, feel that the Pacers were right on their heels, they cut it to 2 at one point. The Thunder would come right back and they would just punch them in the mouth. And I think that kind of response from this Thunder team was something that game one you didn't really see. Game one they were up by 15 and then 10 and then it'd go to 5 and go to 8 and then then it would keep dropping and dropping until the Pacers really tied it up. And this game the Thunder had that urgency, especially on defense, that it's like, okay, we had a couple times where we didn't get a bucket. Now, even if we're not able to score in our next possession, we're still going to go out there and go get a stop because we need to just preserve this lead, which they were able to do and extend it because you don't want them to take the foot off the gas, and I was very happy they did that. Again, the Pacers in this game, I thought they showed so much heart for what was at stake. They knew that going into this game, you lose this game, that means you have to take the one at home and you have to come back and play here in Oklahoma City again, and you'd have to win game 7 to win the series. And I think especially the beginning of the second half, they really played how much it meant to them. I thought Wallace minutes were incredible. Again, he has had a very rough series, especially starting was, I don't think, the right move at all. They started double bigs again, and I really liked that. Hartenstein getting going and as that playmaking hub was probably the story of the first half for me. I loved how good he is at finding cutters in the lane. I mean, I hate sometimes when he takes one dribble and then just picks it up, and I'm like, dude, you could take the ball around. I don't like him dribbling, but you don't need to take one dribble and then just pick up. But a lot of times he'll do that, and then like J-Dub, that's how he got going was, he would cut off ball on Nesmith, cut back door, and it was just, there was nothing they could do. And especially when they would do that, they would, try to drag Turner out of the paint, and eventually that's kind of when they had to go small to try to prevent that. But then again, it just worked in the opposite, that when Hartenstein was off the court, then the Thunder were able to beat that small ball lineup, just kind of driving and attacking the basket. I thought this game, compared to game 4, the 3-point shooting was a huge difference for the Thunder. Again, your guys that have been reliable at times didn't seem so great. I mean, even Caruso, Caruso didn't make a 3 in this game. He was 0 of 3, but Wiggins and Wallace combined 7 for 11 from 3. That is something that this team has desperately needed for a lot of this playoffs, is just someone outside of Caruso to be consistently shooting threes, knocking them down. And I really loved what I saw between J-Dub and Shea, 26 free throw attempts. J-Dub has been so criminally underrated when it comes to getting to the line because, again, he's such a quick, big body getting downhill that, there was nothing that anyone in Indiana could really do. I love seeing him take high-volume free throw attempts because, again, it means he's being super aggressive, not settling for a ton of jumpers. And in this game, when he was taking jumpers, like he would take, a step-back midi, or he had a fadeaway midi towards the end of the game that I just made that face, that, that stank face. And I was genuinely impressed with that. I think going into game 6, though, the Pacers' biggest focus is, number 1, Tyrese Halliburton. He needs to be healthy. If Tyrese Halliburton's not feeling well, a lot's going to be a problem for this team. I think just his playmaking and ability to always push the pace is something that TJ McConnell can replicate some of the pace, but he's not always able to replicate the great playmaking as we saw. Halliburton's he can find an open pass no matter what angle or where he's at on the court. But it just seemed like at times, TJ McConnell wasn't able to exactly do that to find an open look. But I think as long as Tyrese is there, if not, let's say Tyrese misses game 6, then obviously your whole game plan is going to be Siakam. You're going to have to run I would say, a lot of actions to try to get him open. The Thunder are going to probably play him heavy, double him every time. I just think that Siakam he's such a weird mismatch because he's a bigger player. He's a 6'10", big frame, but he plays like he's bigger than he is at times, but then also he moves much faster than a usual almost 7-footer. So I think that's been the Thunder's biggest mismatch has been Pascal Siakam, and at times it seems like the Pacers are a little against going to him. And, there's times he won't touch the ball for a couple minutes, and he was the only reason their offense was going. I believe was it game 4? It might have been game 4. No, it was either game 4 or game 2. I don't know why I can't think of that right now. But he started off the game with like 10 points in the first quarter. Shea was getting in like foul trouble trying to guard him and stuff. And he just kept going at Shea every time. And he was able to really keep them in the game. But it seemed like now, they haven't exactly gone to him until they really needed to, which obviously it worked out well for them. But they're going to have to kind of devise a game plan to make sure he's able to, continue going. And speaking of Shea's defense, once again, I loved his defense in this game. I think his ability to kind of contest shots at the rim was actually insane in this game. He ends the game with 6 stocks, 4 blocks, 2 steals, and he could have had 5 blocks. The one that he had on Tony Bradley, there was no need for him to foul him there. He just didn't actually jump up and try to block it as much as he probably could have. But still, 4 blocks from your starting point guard is always insane to see. And all of those shots I didn't think he was going to block them, honestly. And he continues to impress on that side of the ball. And while people may pick apart him getting blown by at times, it's obvious he is not the best defender on this team, but to say anything short of him being a good defender is just downright wrong. In this game, he really proved that. And as I mentioned earlier, though, Cason Wallace, his impact was very well felt the second he stepped into the game. He was taking very timely big threes, and him and Wiggins combined, those two were constantly knocking down threes when the momentum was starting to shift to bring the Thunder, get the crowd back going. And I think with Cason Wallace especially, though, his defensive impact was a lot better in this game as well. I just really didn't like him starting because he's not always the best decision maker on the court. And also defensively, for some reason, he was getting torched a couple games, but this game, he definitely did not seem that way. He had quite a few little hustle plays, and I mean, he ended the game with 4 steals as well, but I love, him diving for a loose ball and stuff, and honestly, again, you can't ask for a better game from the Thunder for the two-headed monster to combine go for 71, and Shea's playmaking in this game was ridiculous. It really was. He was constantly, if he was getting doubled, it seemed like he was always finding the open guy. Or at times, he'd post up and literally read the defense and wait for them to shift to go double him so he could throw a pass. And I'm pretty sure he probably had 5 hockey assists in this game, not including the 10 actual assists he got, pass to shot. It was just constant from him. And I think, playmaking wise, this was one of his best games in this playoffs so far. And I genuinely, I can't say more about the guy. But yeah, I think going for game 6, it just kind of looks like the Pacers they have to figure out Tyrese. Obviously, I think he'll play better at home anyways, just getting the crowd behind him. But it's going to take a lot of willpower to try to beat down this Thunder defense. And again, I think if Chet has a better game in the next game, the Thunder will close it out in 6. I think a lot of it is just going to depend on the 3-point shooting again. Game 4, the Thunder should not have won with how bad they shot from 3. And if that happens again, who's to say the Pacers won't take that game and send it to 7? The Thunder, obviously, in the driver's seat, I thought they were going into this game just because they have 2 of the 3 games at home. But tonight was a must-win for both teams because if you're the Thunder, you don't want to go down 3-2 heading into Indiana. So, again, Chet, kind of a rough game from him. I liked his defensive impact, though. On offense, on offense at times, it almost seemed like he was playing like a middle schooler. And on defense, he was playing like the best rim protector I've ever seen. So I guess best of both worlds right there. But offensively, I think he will have a better game. Again, I just wish he was a little stronger to go up with some of those finishes he has because sometimes he just really, really fails to get that going. But yeah, I have to say, though, the Thunder came out start to finish in this game, showed why they were, picked going into the series, but also showed why that this game mattered to them more than anything. They want to always play 120% for those home fans. So I wish I could have been there. Obviously, I was at Game 5 of the Timberwolves series to close it out, but I feel like this Game 5 would have been so much different, even though it's not a closeout game. Just the atmosphere of that arena already seemed insane on TV, so seeing it in person would have been nuts. But yeah, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. I kind of wanted to talk about the game, just give my little breakdown. Let me know what you guys think down below. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.